Welcome to the Millionaire Mastermind lecture on Millionaire Mind Power. This particular portion of the lecture is entitled Understanding Strategic Thinking and Developing Strategic Thinkers. I am going to simplify the concept of strategy. Strategy is simply the art and science of planning in regards to manipulating, controlling, and benefiting from and leveraging situations, circumstances, things, people, objects, concepts, contexts in regards to accomplishing your goal. Planning thoughtfully, planning meticulously, methodologically, methodically. This is strategic thinking. Strategic thinking also can be simplified as basically consistent and persistent analysis of the circumstance and the situation. A constant awareness of adapting, maneuvering, and being flexible. Of course, some strategies could be rigid or basically could limit your ability to be flexible. However, the ultimate core of modern strategic thinking is basically flexibility and adaptability in regards to obstacles, challenges, and difficulties as they are relevant to an individual who has a goal to accomplish, and these particular forces are basically forces that could delay or could slow down or impede progress. The first element of strategic thinking I would like to address is particularly confidence. Confidence is very important within the context of the initiation of strategic thinking. Confidence provides the mind with the flow, the energy, the power to think, provided that basically this confidence actually is supported and supplemented by intelligence and thoughtful thinking, clear thoughtful thinking. The modern strategic thinker want to avoid making very important decisions just based on frustration, anger, anxiety. There are rare variables to this particular advisement. The rare variables are those who basically naturally have the ability to immediately convert frustration, anger, anxiety into rational, effective thinking in an instant. However, most humans basically have a difficult time converting frustration into actual, effective, precise mind power. What we're discussing here is modern strategic thinking. So, within the context of modern strategic thinking, modern strategic thinking is synonymous with advanced mind power. The opposite of mind power in this context is basically meeting challenges without planning and improvising everything. Of course, if one does this, improvise everything, then one pretty much is playing the law of averages and rolling the dice. With a strategic thinker aim is to control as much of your destiny in regards to goals and accomplishments as possible. So planning on a day-to-day basis, collecting information and making the necessary adaptations according to the challenges that you're facing in regards to accomplishing your goal. A strategic thinker, this is the holy grail of their mind frame. Now, where confidence is ultimately important, this initiates the ability to have confidence to rely on the thinking process. Well, one would, of course, think that, well, when you say mind power, isn't all thinking essentially mind power? Well, the technical answer is no. As confusing or philosophical as that may appear to be on surface, let me provide you with adequate technical detail. Mind power. Mind, of course, is the faculties of reasoning and logic, and of course, even, often emotion. However, of course, this particular analysis doesn't view emotion as some type of mythological force. It is the energy that comes from thinking or stimuli. It could be negative or positive. With a modern strategic thinker, all emotional energy should be controlled and contained and turned into positive energy. Now, the opposite of mind power is basically when the mind is simply operating off of fear, anxiety, and frustration. Often this isn't mind. It resonates through the mind because the mind basically can perceive it. However, this is just psychological programming. It is your brain experiencing overload from stress. So when you make decisions based off this stress that your brain is feeling, the thought process that is necessary to be strategic hasn't been followed through. The brain basically kind of shuts off the mind to some degree. The mind can only really experience it and feel it, but the brain then takes control, and it's just a program where the mind basically should control the brain and the brain not the mind. The mind is a more dynamic, fluid energy that basically could analyze and consider all of the options that need to be basically considered before making a decision, where the brain basically is just a system of programs, and if those programs run automatically without the mind checking those programs to make sure that they're not defective, then you run the risk of error. And with modern strategic thinking within the context of mind power, the overall objective is to control the quality of your thinking so that your chances and opportunities would be basically higher. There would be a higher probability of success. You want to minimize negative effects by basically controlling your mind, utilizing your mind power to analyze the situation thoroughly, so you'll know all your options, you'll know all of your obstacles. Within this context, the strategic thinker is simply a master planner and is a consistent and persistent master planner. Always planning, always thinking. Now, often there is a mythology, and one can even consider an approach to thinking that often attempts to negate thinking within the context of thinking as an intensified, perpetual force. It can be summed up in a cliche that states that, well, you can overthink something. But with strategic thinking, particularly when you're planning, there is no overthinking in the initial process. The initial process, you want to think out things thoroughly, get all of your information. So there is no overthinking in the initial phases when you're collecting information, so that you can determine what decision needs to be made and what decision you're going to choose. And when I say decisions as itemized decisions, where I can do this, I can do that, I can do this, and if I do this, this is going to happen. If I do that, this will happen. Now, one would think that, well, this takes lots of energy and it's very technical and very burdensome. No. Once you train your mind to have the confidence to solve any type of problems, the brain does this automatically. Within the context of mind power, there are many different forces that individuals could use to assist them with generating this confidence to basically empower their minds. Some, of course, use theological concepts. Some rely on a very prominent, yet simple conceptualization, simple within a context of a point of reference to a power that empowers the mind, is God, the universe, a force. Some use emotional sentiment. Your mother needs you to take care of your children, simply because you care about someone. Now, how is all of this relevant to strategic thinking and accomplishing goals, whether it's business, whether you have artistic pursuits, whether it's academics? Where this is all relevant to that is that the mind needs to be motivated in order to reach the highest level of strategic thinking. So the mind has to be motivated, and this is the first principle of strategic thinking on an advanced level of acquiring millionaire mind power is confidence. Now, we often hear about acquiring confidence and how do you go about acquiring confidence, and often there is this disposition to where there is a consideration that, well, maybe it's a genetic thing, maybe it's an environmental thing. The answer is all of those things. However, one can train themselves to have higher level of confidence. You can train yourself to have a higher level of confidence regardless of what type of confidence level you have now. For those who have high confidence levels, doesn't mean that basically all is well. A high confidence level without the strategic understanding and the acquisition of wisdom and intelligence and thoughtful awareness, then confidence pretty much basically could be dangerous if it's not based in fact. And if it's basically right, if as a force, you're not trained on how to use it properly, it can come off as arrogance, and often it can even actually literally become perpetual error, because due to overconfidence, you start to feel as if you know all things, you know everything, and pretty much what that does is hinders the brain and the mind from basically operating at its highest level, because there is a blockage that basically is sending messages to the brain and mind that, well, it knows everything, and from that there's no movement there, so it's difficult to learn more. And the overall objective also of a strategic thinker is to continuously learn. If there is a mantra for a strategic thinker, that's it. Continuously learn. Meditate on what you've learned. Then practice on applying it. And then apply it. Now, within the context of this lecture, Millionaire Mind Power, we are concerned with success. Now, for those who aren't familiar with the basic concepts of this particular system of thought, when we say millionaire mind power, we are basically referring not just to economics, but we're referring basically right to the constant pursuit of resources as it applies to empowering an individual to assist their environment and to move the world along forward in regards to higher levels of human development. Entrepreneurship utilized as a spiritual platform to basically help others.